Hello, good morning. Welcome to day 2, the pathway to sustainable business and SDG, concept, tools, and reporting. This is our second day for the Thailand beginner workshops. In this occasion, we would also like to thanks again to our partners, the UK PAC Green Recovery Challenge Funds, and also the Stock Exchange of Thailand for making these occasions happen. And especially to our collaborator, the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP. And thank you everyone for joining this morning. We are going to, this is part of the Closing the Gap and Sustainable Finance and Enabling Green Recovery through Capacity Building in CDP, TCFD Aligned Disclosure, and the GRI Standards. We will have a serial workshop for you. Yesterday, you already joined the beginner workshop for day 1. And today is the second day for the beginner workshops. And in the coming months, we will have the advanced workshops. And then the last one is the capital market workshops. All materials will be shared after today's sessions and will be delivered to your email. Now, the today learning outcomes is to become familiar with the background, principles, frameworks of sustainable business, and to understand the alignment between the sustainable business, the GRI standards, the SDG or Sustainable Development Goals. Under today learning outcomes, we will also try to take the first steps to prepare your organization to release a sustainability report that aligns with the GRI standards and the SDG, and know where to look for additional resources and supports from GRI. Now we have 2 sessions on today's agenda. The first one is the introduction to what business can do for the SDG. This is more on the concept. And then the second session will be on the mapping of the intersections of sustainability and the SDG. Now, let me introduce our first speaker. The first session will be delivered by Henry Wijaya. He is the Indonesia Country Program Manager from the Global Reporting Initiative. He has been working with listed company, SME, universities, and media, and also professional associations to deliver capacity building on sustainability reporting. And previously, he also worked in development issue with a wide range of experience from gender equality, human rights, public health, to diversity and inclusions. Henry holds a master's degree from the Lee Kuan Yew University and then the Sydney University. So he has 2 degrees in public policy and in gender. So Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lani. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our session today. So if yesterday you have learned about the TCFD framework and also CDP initiatives about how your companies can report, monitor, and also evaluate the progress of your environmental performance, today we will move to another aspects of ESG, which are the social and also economic and governance aspects. But before we delve further into those 3 important ESG issues, let me start by introducing you to the concepts of sustainable business and what sustainable business can help us to be more sustainable in our practices and performance. Maybe most of you here often ask about why, and why do we have as a business to be more sustainable? And if we as a business want to be a sustainable business, then how should we improve our practices and operations to be more sustainable? So the devil is always in the details. And that is why we need to know first about the current trends of ESG and why these ESG issues are very important. For your note, ESG here stands for environment, social, and governance issues. Recently, as you have seen in my slides, there are multiple initiatives from the investor side to make sure that companies really adhere to good performance of their ESG. Even now, ESG investment has risen to nearly $23 trillion globally. And even half of 100 most large companies have linked their executive pay to the ESG targets achievement. So it means that more and more investors are aware about the importance of ESG, and they push forward the companies and also the senior management level to make sure that ESG performance is really in place, monitored, and also communicated to the wide range of public audience, including themselves as investors. Because they want that the money they invest is actually going to be used for something that is more impactful and also do not create a more risk and also a more negative impacts in society and environment. And for academics, for business practitioners, we call this era as stakeholder capitalism, whereby we start to think about what our stakeholders really want from our business. Because without the stakeholders as a business, we cannot thrive. As a company, we need customers. As a company, we need to comply with government regulations. And also as a company, we need to really understand what our investors really want from our business. So that's why stakeholders are very central in this new landscape of business. In responding to this kind of emerging landscape, the Stock Exchange of Thailand has been having a lot of different initiatives. For example, they have joined the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange initiatives and also other initiatives to commit and also to regularly organize dialogue with investors, companies, and regulators to promote long-term sustainable investment that can address the current environment, social governance, and economic risk and opportunity. So that is why now, since yesterday, we have a 2-day workshop to really help companies to be more cognizant and more capable in mainstreaming ESG metrics, performance, and progress in their practices. So far, you have frequently hear the term ESG and sustainability. So what are the differences between the two? So ESG, once again, stands for environment, social, and governance factors. So in short, all these three aspects refer to the data of your performance in every single environment, social, governance, and last but not least, your economic performance of the companies. So if this data, this ESG data is put all together, this data will shape how your company will formulate their strategy for the long-term future. And that the strategy, we call it sustainability. So in other words, sustainability consists of ESG, performance, and data. So when we talk about sustainability, then we talk about the bigger concept. And when we talk about ESG, we are talking about elements that comprises what sustainability means. So that's how we can understand the difference between ESG and sustainability. Of course, your ESG performance is then reported in what we call sustainability report, because your report will compile all these different ESG performance into one single document that can be accessed by public and your stakeholders. Recently, in 2021, there are several emerging ESG issues that have become prominent in the investors' mindsets. They are energy, diversity, climate change, and also executive compensation. So these are the ESG issues that will be focused by investors, and we as a company is now having an opportunity to respond to these ESG focus areas that have been championed by many investors. So if we are already aware with ESG issues, so now the question is how we integrate and think very meaningfully about ESG issues in our overall operations. This is where we can introduce the concept of sustainable business or sustainability in business. So sustainable business considers a wide array of environment, so economic, social, and governance factors when making their decision and also shaping their business strategy. Put it differently, sustainability in business or sustainable business means that you think your ESG performance and key focus area very carefully when you are trying to improve, manage, and evaluate your own performance, operations, and business practices. That is why if we want to think ESG very seriously, then it means we need to have a good corporate management or governance in place. Because with this corporate governance in place, as a company, we can start to think about the impact or measure the impact that we have produced from our business, as well as we can think very structurally about the risk and opportunities that the business will face soon. And by addressing these risk opportunities through this good governance, good corporate governance, then it means your company will have a concrete strategy to move forward. And with this concrete strategy, then as a business, you create a value either through your product, through your branding, through your reputation, even through your trust, the trust that you finally built with your customers and your stakeholders. So with all this value creation, then it will help you to sustain your profitability as well. So that's how we think about the relationship between ESG and sustainability in our business landscape. So if we already know this concept, then how we can move forward? Of course, sustainable business is not a magic bullet. It's not a silver bullet because there is no one size fits all. Different companies located in different locations will face different challenges, different contexts, and different goals. And that is why, as a company, you really need to really think your sustainability context in which you think about what your goals are and then what are your values that you want to champion and promote internally and externally, and also to understand what your stakeholders expect from you. In other words, you can think about what your customers want, what the government really expects you to do, and what are your investors wanting from your business, especially during this COVID pandemic, for example, because the shifting situation will also shift your stakeholder expectations on you. So if we already know that by doing sustainable business means that you need to think carefully about your stakeholders. So this is also a serious thing that we need to consider, because when you try to address your stakeholders' expectation and interests, it means that you have to communicate your business and ESG performance publicly. Usually, this is communicated through sustainability reporting. When your sustainability reports are available in public, then it means it is open to be measured and publicly rated by different agencies, from consulting and assurance, from analysts and rating agencies, even from your investors. Because usually big investors will use rating agency services to evaluate the ESG performance of your companies, one of them by using your sustainability report. And then they will rate the data you present and determine whether your business is worth and also good, sufficiently good to be invested for your for businesses. So in doing so, we need to also think about how we can think about the risk, the regulations, different international and national frameworks, and also stakeholder engagement. Again, you need to learn about how and what your company, your stakeholder really expects from you. And after that, you focus on the key areas to measure, improve, and report particular key performance issues. We have different international and national regulation on sustainability. And here, as you can see, there are a lot of programs at the international level whereby many international
Sorry about that. I think Henry lost his connection.
Hi, hello everyone. Yes, I'm
Henry.
back. Sorry, because the electricity is off. So this is the importance of sustainability, right? Because the energy is suddenly off. So I think this is a good examples how actually if we think about sustainability, then it means we also think about how it will affect our future workplace and productivity. So let me restart again with where I have stopped before. So when we think about how to integrate sustainability, then it means we need to think about the risk and also the opportunity. And when we think about the opportunity, then we need to also think about the current regulations and international and national frameworks, because all of them provide what we can write, what we can think, and how we can shape our strategy for the future. And by thinking these different international frameworks and also regulations, we also need to engage our stakeholders, as we have said before, how we listen to the expectations from the government, from customers, from the regulators about what they really expect from us as a business. Last but not least, by listening to what they expect from us, then we can really focus on particular key focus areas that we want to improve in our business and included in the business strategy. And that is what we call as materiality analysis. Last but not least, after we do all this assessment, then we measure the current state of our business, and we think about what we need to improve and then report it, communicate it publicly. Next slide, please. So we know if we do this, then we need to think about international and national regulations on sustainability. Next. We have multiple initiatives already. For example, the international norms like Paris Climate Agreement and also Sustainable Development Goals have set up, for example, limit global warming to well below 2 and preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius, for example. So this is the international norms that every country has committed to achieve. And also not to mention the SDGs, which have 17 goals that are also committed by all countries in the world. So with these international norms, we know that these international norms have also been translated into international norms for business sector. For example, International Finance Corporation have also publish their programs, their guidelines on sustainable finance, which more or less translate all these international norms into business and financial sector. At the national level in Thailand, we also have SET in translating all these national norms and framework into their strategy and guideline for companies. For example, in 2020, SET will release corporate sustainability guide for listed companies. So these are all the national frameworks that have been translated nationally and locally. Next. Now, we are thinking about how we want to align all these different frameworks together. And this is the challenge, of course, for companies and also for practitioners about how we want to move forward. Next. As we know, if you see there are a lot of different frameworks, then here we can also see that different frameworks are introduced by different organizations. For example, the Global Reporting Initiative has its own standards to report the ESG performance. And also CDP and TCFD also offers frameworks how company can report their ESG performance. It seems that there are a lot of frameworks and standards, but this is why we are here today. We are going to help you to really align all these different frameworks in one go. Next. Not to mention, if we already discuss or introduce about GRI standards, CDP, and TCFD framework, so we also have SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So this is also another lens, another framework that more and more companies have increasingly used the framework to report their contribution to the SDGs goals, because their contributions, if measured properly, can help a country to report the country's achievement at the UN high-level panel meeting. That is also why we need to align all these international frameworks, national guideline or regulations, and also SDG goal in one go. So then your report can be used easily and efficiently for multiple different purposes and objectives. Next. So as I have promised you before, how we can align all these different frameworks in one go. So let me start with the GRI standards first. The GRI standards comprises of all these different standards, from foundation, general disclosure, management approach, and equally importantly, 34 topic-specific standards that consist of economic, environmental, and social standards. So what are these topic-specific standards consist of? Next. You can see there are multiple economic, environmental, and social issues that you can report using these standards. Of course, as I have mentioned, if you want to communicate, improve your ESG performance, you really need to think carefully about your key focus area. So it means that you are not obliged to report all of these issues in one report. What you need is actually how you think very carefully what key issue areas relevant and significant to your business operations, and also how you justify those key focus areas by having a thorough and meaningful consultation with your stakeholders. Next. So if we already know about the bigger picture of how we can start our sustainability and ESG improvement, and also we already know about different national and international frameworks. So now the technical question arising is how we can do it in one go, as I have promised before. So in front of you, you can see the pathways about how you can align different frameworks in one go. So first of all, we know SDGs at the top level. SDGs, or Sustainable Development, is an international goal that many of you can refer to because it has been committed by all countries in the world. And then the SDGs principles or goals are translated into ESG and sustainability reporting. So when you want to communicate your sustainability or ESG performance, then you can use GRI standards as the international standards in addition to the TCFD framework. And then here, in using GRI standards, you can select particular key focus areas that are relevant to your business. After that, after you select the key focus area and you look at what the GRI standards required you to disclose, then you align each GRI standards with relevant SDGs target or goals. For example, if you are already using renewable energy and you report that you are using that renewable energy, then it means that you can align the renewable energy with particular GRI standard, usually GRI energy. And then after that, you align that with SDGs goal on climate change. So that's how actually it works technically. Last but not least, we also introduce gender lens because nowadays investors are increasingly looking at diversity in companies. And that is why if you report some sustainability or ESG aspects, you also need to think carefully about the data segregation. It means that you really need to look at your data and think how your performance can be analyzed from gender perspective. For example, if you are using renewable energy, maybe you can think how this renewable energy will affect positive to women's empowerment. So in a way that you see every single initiative that you do along with its positive impacts on women's empowerment or workplace diversity and gender equality, for example. In other words, in doing so, you need to segregate your data based on gender, and also you need to highlight particular strategies that you do to increase gender equality at workplace. For example, through equal employment policy, through training and education, through local community programs that targets poor women, for example. So then you will have not only reported your performance according to the international standards and SDGs, but also you embed gender lens very carefully in your report. That is why after you do all of this, then you will have a single report, a single efficient report that have all these components all together. Next. So that's all from me for today. So I would like to apologize again for the technical issues that happened before. So in this 10-minute break, we will have a question and answer as well. So if you have some burning questions, you can use your Q&A, you can use the Q&A box and we will try to answer your questions within 10 minutes. Thank you.
About sustainability risk, economic risk, environmental risk, and social risk, and how the sustainable business model look like from the GRI point of view. Henry? Sorry, I think Henry is frozen again. There's a problem with the connection. Okay, so let me try to respond to the second questions first. From Lilith Karn-Takul, should the company disclose TCFD report and GRI report in one consolidated report or separate? We see two different practices. Some companies use the same report. For example, like yesterday, CDP showed the example from the City Development Limited. Everything is put in one report, one sustainability report. They even merged the GRI standards, the SASB standard, TCFD, and I forgot there is another standards that they use when they prepare the sustainability report. But I think more and more company now, when you look at their sustainability webpage or publication, some prefer separate TCFD report. So it depends on your preference, and also it depends on the request from your investor. But usually there is a separate page, if not in a separate document, that explain where you can find your TCFD response. I hope it answers the questions. Okay, so Henry is not back yet. So let me try to respond to number one from Paul Pia. Okay, Henry is here. So Henry, can you respond to questions number one from Paul Pia? Henry, are you there? So really.
Yes, Bulani, I'm here. So could you read the question for me, please?
So yeah, so there is a question. Could you please explain more about sustainability risk, economic risk, environmental risk, social risk, and how the sustainable business model look like from GRI point of view?
Okay, that's a very good question. So actually, if you think about the environmental and economic risk, we don't have to think very further from our COVID pandemic situation. So with this COVID pandemic, as you can see, first, businesses are not that thriving because of the lockdown, because all of these lockdown measures that suddenly prevent customers to go and buy your products, for example. So that's economic risk. But this economic risk, right, cannot really separate it from the environmental risk in which the COVID pandemic has affected our economic performance very badly. So that's how we think about the connection between the environmental risk and also the economic risk. So if we already see it this way, so it means if we look from the GRI point of view, so we need to really think the interconnections between environment, social and economic risk all together. Not always we see it as a separate entity. So this is how we think about risk using the GRI perspectives. And that is why if you read and later you look at the GRI standards, in GRI standards, actually we always try to encourage companies to see these connections of different environmental, economic, and social issues. For example, in one of the GRI standards, or GRI, more precisely GRI 201, economic performance, in one of the standards, we encourage companies to see how climate change or climate risk can have a debilitating impact on their economic performance. So from that standards, we can see the logic behind it, how we always see the interconnectivity between all these different aspects: environment, social, and also economic issues. Thank you. I hope I have answered your question.
Okay, so we have another question from Anonymous. What is the GRI direction about the integrating report, annual report, and sustainability report combined?
Okay, that's also a very good question. So actually, at this moment, we always see annual report and sustainability report are two different and separate entities. However, recently we have already seen the uptake of integrated reporting. But here we need to really distinguish very carefully between integrated reporting and sustainability reporting. Integrated reporting usually use different way of thinking. So, for example, integrated reporting, as a companies, you need to think and integrate 6 capitals in your thinking of your business strategy. So you must think about your human capital, financial capital, and the other types of capital. So this is how you do the analysis about your capital that is going beyond just financial capital. However, in reporting all this each capital or all the performance under this capital, sometimes companies still use the GRI standards, because the GRI standards provide a specific and also very comprehensive measurement for each different ESG issues. In practice, for example, as a company, you publish an integrated report and you report about social capital. In your social capital, you want to disclose about diversity and inclusion at your workplace. Then how? You can use GRI standards, right? So here, usually when a company report diversity and inclusion under social capital, then they use GRI standards, particular GRI standards that they can use to showcase more rigorous data according to the GRI standards. So in this case, they use GRI, equal opportunity and non-discrimination, for example, because those GRI standards really specifically ask you to disclose any kind of breach, fine, and also non-compliance according to diversity and inclusion issues that will support your analysis on your social capital. So that's how the relationships between annual report, sustainability report, and integrated reporting. One interesting thing that I've observed in Indonesia, people usually refer integrated reporting as a combination of annual report and sustainability report. And that is actually not correct at all, because integrated reporting has a different logic. It's not a combination between annual report and sustainability report, but it is a standalone document, a more comprehensive document that really showcase the connections between 6 capitals, particularly financial capital, social capital, and other types of capital. Thank you.
Okay, so actually we are at the end of the break sessions, but let's do just the last questions. So Henry, do GRI standard is a guideline of ESG report? The question is from Tan Rafi.
Okay, thank you. That's also a very good question. So actually GRI standards is an internationally recognized standards of reporting. It provides a benchmark or a standards about how a company can report in a particular issue. So it's not per se a guideline. It is more or less like standardized reporting standards for you to report particular issues. For example, you are a company, you want to report diversity of your employees. Of course, you can report it using your own way. You can report how many women. You can report how many men in your business. Okay, that's what you can do. But by using your own standard and measurement, the question is whether that measurement is comparable and acknowledged at the international level. So that's the question. So if you want to provide that the measurement and the data that is aligned to the international requirement, then you can use the GRI standards to report that particular issue. Thank you. I hope I have answered your question too.
Okay, so I see two raised hand from Sopida and just a moment. Okay, so for those who raised their hand, we encourage you to send the questions through the Q&A box. So hope that is okay with you all. So let's continue.
Thank you, Lani. Thank you, Lani. So now it's my turn to introduce my wonderful colleague, Lani Harijanti, who is the ASEAN Regional Program Manager of GRI. Lani Harijanti has a very extensive knowledge and professional experience in sustainability reporting because since 2018, Lani has been working with private sectors, companies, entrepreneurs, SMEs, universities, and also NGOs in mainstreaming sustainability reporting in Indonesia and also other countries in Southeast Asia. Furthermore, she was also working for the United Nations to guard the implementation of Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals in Indonesia. One more interesting fact about her, she is a medical doctor that have been involved in various development sectors, including gender equality and also many programs on anti-violence against women and children. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Lani Harijanti to the stage. Lani, the stage is yours.
So thank you, Henry. So hello again, everyone. So let us start with the second session. We are going to discuss about mapping business indicators and the SDG. Okay. So GRI has several publications to help companies in linking their ESG, GRI standards, and SDG. Now we are going to focus only on two guidelines. We have many more. Yeah, there was an SDG compass before. But we are for today's sessions, we are only going to focus to these two guidelines so that you are not confused. So the first one is the brand new linking the SDG and the GRI standards. This one is updated last year in March. And then the next one is the one published by GRI and the UN Global Compact, Business Reporting on the SDG. I would like to refer to the second book, which is titled with the analysis of the goals and targets. So let me show you the difference and how to use these two books. Now for the first book, linking the SDG and the GRI standards, so this one is usually used for you who are already firm in your SDG selection. So for example, if Calon Pokwan says that I am working on SDG 2, so this book is useful for Calon Pokwan to look at what are the disclosure related to SDG 2, because you are already selecting your SDG and you are already sure on what you are going to do for contributing to SDG 2. So the linking the SDG and the GRI standard is going to help you with determining the metrics that you are going to prepare and then the disclosures that you are going to report on the selected on the selected SDG targets. So this is with the linking guidelines. Now, on the second guideline, the business reporting on the SDG and analysis of the goals and targets. This one is much more useful for those who wants to get started with integrating SDG into their business practice, into their business strategy, and into their reporting practices. Why? Because under this guideline, you can find also a possible relevant business actions that will guide you on how to achieve the related SDG target. Now on the screen, you see an example from SDG target 8.5 on achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all. As you can see, it shows some examples. So this one is only one about what are the relevant possible actions that can respond to target 8.5. And then when you already choose your selected business actions or sort of match with the one that you are thinking about or you have been practicing, then you will look at the selections of related disclosures. In this case, about employment and workforce, it relates to GRI 401, and then the available business disclosure. These are some of the range, for example, like the total number and rate of new employee hires during the reporting period by age group, gender, and region, and so on. So these are the difference between these two books, and depends on where you are on your SDG journey. For those who are quite mature and quite sure, maybe the linking book is much more useful for you. And for those who are just starting, the analysis of the goals and targets will be more of help for your journey. So next, on the alignment between sustainability reporting, SDG agendas, and the GRI standards. So how do we do this? First, before we start with the GRI standard or the SDG, because everyone here needs to look at the Thailand regulations, the SEC 56.1 on one reporting requirement. So this should be the first basis when you want to start with your journey on sustainability. So we hope on the next slides that we already capture the main key requirements outlined by the SEC 56.1 report requirement. If you see something missing or has not been discussed, do remind us in the Q&A or in the chat so that we can follow up either on today's sessions or in the advanced section in the upcoming months. Now, because the slide decks will be delivered to your email, so how to use this deck? First, we will look at the SEC 56.1 key requirements or the common standard of practice, and then we will match it with the GRI standards, which is used to address those key sustainability issues. The GRI standards will give you an indication on what are the metrics that you can use to measure and to report, and then we also set the relevant SDG goals for each key sustainability issue and correspond to the related GRI standard. We also provide some reporting examples. This can be used independently by companies as inspiration or reference to identify and how to show the data. So this is not a textbook, but just an example. If you find something much more strategic, do let us know so that we can also be well informed about some of the good practices from other companies that maybe we can use for the upcoming session or our sessions within another countries. Now let's start. So the ECC 56.1 started with sustainability policy and targets. So this one is an example from Charoen Pokphand Sustainability Report in 2019. They show the page of their key focus area with sustainability target and framework. If you look at the page, it actually also mapped against SDG indicators. So I'm going to take only one example. Charoen says that they will focus on health and well-being, and they have a target of 30% new products that will help promote health and well-being. In this case, Charoen mapped it that they, by developing new products that promote the health and well-being, Charun is contributing to SDG 2 on zero hunger and SDG 3 on health and well-being for all. So this is one of the good examples on how to tag the SDG with your sustainability policy and target. Now, on the second step, the SEC 56.1 require you to disclose about your value chain and stakeholders. Using the GRI standard, we also recommend you to explain about the whole scope or your value chains, especially those that is going to be covered in your sustainability report, which reflects the coverage of your sustainability program usually. And then we also recommend under the GRI standard 10240 to 10244 for you to list your key stakeholders, how you identify them, and what are the key issues identified by your stakeholder, and then how you engage your stakeholder. Some company will also show how they respond to their stakeholder concerns on the table that shows the engagement with the stakeholder. This one is an example from Charan Papan. They show the different value chains and also the 10 key stakeholder groups. The stakeholders is important. If you are considering SDG or even sustainability in general, stakeholder voice usually influence on the directions of your sustainability policy, sustainability strategy, and then on the target that you will measure and show in your sustainability report. So let's start with economic performance. There was a question before about GRI 200 series and the TCFD. Hope I will be able to respond to that questions. And if you are still not sure with the explanation, please do send another questions in the Q&A button. Now let's start with the topic of economic performance. The first one we will discuss about the how to report on economic performance under the GRI. Related to the most common disclosures, we will only select GRI 201 step 1, which shows the different economic performance of your company, and then the indirect economic impact, which usually report about your CSR contribution, and then the procurement practices, GRI 204.1, which usually shows about your procurement practices. GRI 204.1 require you to disclose about the proportion spent on local supplier. Now, this if you do this, if you practice this disclosure, actually you already contribute to SDG 8 minimally, and then SDG 9, especially on the indicator 8.1 on the annual growth rate of real GDP per capita. So anything related to your revenue is actually contributing to the country GDP. So if you are giving a positive growth rate, it means that you already contribute to SDG 8.1. Now, if you increase the procurement practices by spending more on the local suppliers, I think in the one of the I forgot what it's called, but the SET shows new business resiliency by requiring you to disclose about the local spending on local suppliers. So if you do this, you respond actually on two SDG. One is 8.3, if I'm not mistaken, is about growing the small and medium enterprises so that they will be more resilient. And then on indicator 9.3.1, if you include the small medium enterprises into part of your industry value chain. Okay, so this is the first steps on how to align between what you have been practicing in terms of sustainability business practices and reporting, and then how to align it with the SDG. Now, there is a note about the GRI and the TCFD. For TCFD, GRI also align the TCFD, especially on the economic performance, with the GRI 201.2. Basically, it requires you to disclose about the financial implications of climate change. You can go to GRI 201.2 to respond on the correlations between TCFD and economic performance in the GRI standard. Okay. We also select about local suppliers because this one is also aligned with the TCFD requirement. TCFD also asks you to respond on the how local suppliers are assessed or selected for their environmental performance. Okay, so that's why inclusion of local suppliers is important. It's not only on the economic pillar, but it also on the environmental pillars, especially with regard to your journey in including TCFD in your reporting or on your sustainability pathway. Okay. Next, let's deep dive. So the GRI 201.1, it requires you to disclose about distribution of economic values for stakeholders, for CSR, for employees, and for government. Now, let's take a look at the example. This one is from PTT Global Chemical Sustainability Report. If you see the blue boxes, for example, the sale revenue, this one corresponds to SDG 8. And then if you see below on the economic value distributed, there is an employee wages and benefits. It contributes to SDG 8 on job creation. It contributes to SDG 1 in providing fair compensations. And then PTT also reported on the payments to governments cross taxes, which means that they also contribute to the GDP too. And then operating costs, yeah. They also report on proportion of spending on local suppliers in Thailand. You see the small box. If you don't want to open the GRI standards, you can sneak peek. We have the reporting requirement of GRI 201.1 in the purple box on the bottom left. Now, some of the potential action plans to show that you are contributing to the SDG is the easy step is that if it's possible as part of your target is to set a target on, for example, increasing your expenditure, increasing your spending plan on procuring local goods from local supplier. If you do that as part of your action plan, it means that you are already contributing or to SDG 8. The correct target is SDG 8.3. Now, next, let's take a look at the local procurement, proportion of local supplier versus non-local suppliers. Under the GRI 204.1, for the local suppliers, and if you also want to align this with the TCFD, we should include the GRI 308 on supplier environmental assessment. But in principle, if you do this, you are going to contribute to SDG 9, especially the target 9.3 and indicator 9.3.1, which is the proportion of small-scale industry in total industry value added. Okay. Next, so this one is a good example. Antam is a mineral mineral manufacturing company in Indonesia. So they purchase from local suppliers their mineral sources. So for example, like here, they disclose that they get their mineral ore from Sulawesi Tenggara, from Maluku, and then from some other location. So this is one good example on how to show that you are already contributing to SDG 8 and SDG 9 by increasing your proportion of spendings to local supplier, which means you contribute to the local economy in the location of your local suppliers. Again, if you want to take a look at the reporting requirement of GRI, you can take a look at the bottom right. There is a reporting requirements in the box. Those are the information that is required for disclosing in accordance to GRI 204. A note, in Indonesia, local products means having more than 25% of local ingredients. Because some of you might raise the questions, so what does it mean by local supplier? Does it mean truly locally products? Then we can say that we are contributing to local economy. So it depends on your national regulation. For example, in Indonesia, local supplier with local products means that the local contents is more than 25%. So make sure that you are aligned with your national regulation when you claim that you are contributing to local economy through empowering or purchasing local products to local suppliers. Okay. Now, next, we are looking at the economic performance on the contributions to the local community. In this one, under the GRI, we have a quite wide of range GRI standards that you can use to align your agenda on contributing to local community. Under the GRI standard, you can look at GRI 203.1 and 203.2. Basically, this will disclose about the your spending on public infrastructure and public service. And then on local community is GRI 413, and on market presence, it's been the human capital engagement from the local community. And then the last one, as discussed previously, on the procurement practice from the local community. Now, on the SDG, for the impact on local communities is actually not limited to one SDG. So for your works with local communities actually can contribute to many SDG goals and targets. For example, if your CSR activity provides support for accessing to basic service, you can take this to SDG 1, contribute to directly to indicator 1.4.1, which is increasing the access to basic service to the local populations. But if it's related to access to water, then you can take also to contributing to SDG 6. And then if it's about giving access to energy resources, it means that you can also say that you contribute to SDG 7 and then so on. So this is how we suggest how you start working and aligning between the 2 and 3 different standards. Now, let's take a look at the GRI standards on GRI 203, the indirect economic impacts. For your works related to CSR, usually you will align with GRI 203 and GRI 413 on local communities. It requires you to disclose about your investment, either it's direct investment or in-kind investment, either on infrastructures or supports the community. While on GRI 413, it frames the way you report on your operations with local community engagement, the impact that you make, the assessment that you use to determine on your activity, and then the community development programs that you develop for the communities. And then on 413.2, you need to disclose about the impacts you made, whether it's positive or negative on the local community. So this one will help you to give a good frameworks on how to disclose about your programs with local community, or in this case, your CSR or social program. Now this one is another example from PTT. So for PTT, they disclose about their cash contribution. They also disclose about the in-kind giving. They also quite transparent about the management overhead of their social investment and donations. They even counted the employee volunteering time for their social works. So that is correspond to GRI 203.1. While for the local community development programs, so we only show you one example. This one is for the Pumpang Kacau project. Basically, it's about waste management projects at the community. As you can see, it contributes to creating local employment because of the way they manage the waste by collecting the plastic waste and then teaching the community on how to process the plastic waste into another goods, reusable goods. In this case, I think they use it for cloth for the monk uniform. And then through this waste project, especially the plastic waste, PTT claimed that they contribute to reducing plastic waste going to the oceans. And then they also says that they contribute to SDG 12 because this is about minimizing waste and then increasing recycling, which is aligned with the circular economy as outlined in the SDG 12. Okay, next. So some of the potential action plans using the CSR pathway is that you can create a program that invests in the public infrastructures. So any kind of investment in public infrastructures will immediately contribute to the SDG. For example, like PTT with the Kumbang Kacau project, it immediately corresponds to SDG 12 because it's about waste management and reducing waste. So that is just one of the examples. Now let's go to the social performance. Now, we will focus on selected social performance. So we are not going to discuss all social performance on these sessions. The first one is about fair treatment and employment with the focus on gender equality on child protections. Now, under the GRI standards, you can look at the GRI standards covering on GRI 202, 401 on employment, and 405 on diversity and equal opportunity. While on the fair treatment, you can look at GRI 406 on non-discrimination, and then GRI 408 on child labor, and GRI 409 on forced labor. This is also aligned with the SEC 56.1 report, which also require you about decent works and human rights compliance. I think it's mentioned about human rights due diligence too. Now, if you do that, actually you are already contributing to SDG 5, 8, and 16. Now on SDG 5, it's about, for example, if you have your own legal frameworks or company policy about recruitment or about non-discriminations, about gender equality and women empowerment, you have already contributed to indicator 5.1 and 1 on having a legal framework in place to promote, enforce, and monitor equality and non-discriminations on the basis of sex. Now, if you have a programs to increase the proportion of women in managerial level, it means that you also contribute to indicator 5.5.2. Similarly, if you have a balance, gender balance ratio at the managerial level between women and men, it means you still contribute to indicate gender equality or SDG 5. Now under SDG 8, related to fair treatment, ensuring that you give out a minimum, at least minimum wage all through your value chain. So that's why value chain is important in the frameworks. It means you already contribute to indicator 8.5.1. If you provide jobs down to your upstream and downstream value chains, it means you contribute to reducing unemployment rate and so on. On the child labor, it relates to indicator 8.7. As mentioned in the human rights due diligence, this is not limited to your own operations. It needs to be extended down to the supply chains. You need to put in place the mechanisms to ensure that child labor is not practiced through the whole your value chain. Now, on the proportion of youth, as you know, in the Southeast Asia region, we have a very large proportions of young people, and then many of them has problem with accessing employment, especially long terms of formal employment. So if you have a specific programs to address this one, it means that we already contribute to the SDG 8, especially target 8.6 and indicator 8.6.1. Okay. Now, let's deep dive on the market presence, GRI 202. Basically, GRI require you to disclose about ratio of entry-level wages versus minimum wage, especially in the location where you operate, and then proportions of senior management from local communities. So if you do this, you already contribute to SDG 5, 8, and 16. Okay, now let's take a look at the example. So this one is from Sembcorp Industries. They are listed in Singapore. It's an energy company. They also have waste management and water management business units. So Sembcorp disclose about their market presence by disclosing the number of employees based on location, disaggregated by male and female. And then they also shows the proportions of local hire. According to GRI, this is important as part of ensuring your sustainability practices. So if you do this, you already contribute to SDG 5 and 8. Now, for the employment, if you use the framework of GRI 401, it requires you to disclose about representation and turnover of employee, remuneration for permanent employees, and parental leave. For this one, if you have a concrete management approach for these three items, you already contribute to SDG 5 and SDG 8. This is an example from Enel. Enel is an energy company in Italy. It became multinational, and now it's diversified into more renewable energy. And they even have a new line of business on digitalization and electrifications. Enel disclosed about the new hires and turnover based on gender. And then these are the benefits that is shown by Enel for their employee. So they have flexible schedule, they have seasonal schedule of short week, part-time telecommuting, smart working, and hours plans. So Enel is one of the best example. I think they are also recognized as the frontliners for sustainability and SDG. They have a very good response on their SDG link bond. If you want to learn about how Enel do it in terms of SDG, to take a look at the Enel sustainability page on their website. They have a very strong gender equality programs. Enel actually managed to get 44% women in the candidate pool in all new recruitment process. So their goal is to have 50% women as applicants in new recruitment process by 2023, and they managed to get to 44% as of last year. Last year report in the sustainability report. Okay. Now on diversity and equality opportunity, GRI asks you to disclose about diversity of governance body and employees and the ratio salary between men and women. So this one is the example from BMW Sustainable Value Report. So they show about the ratio of male and female employees in the workforce, and then they also show the ratio of employee based on gender, age, and function. So visibility of data disaggregation is important to show that you are serious about your equality agenda and diversity agenda. Okay. On the child labor, risk of child labor identified in the operation. So this one is actually extended not only in your internal operations, but also into the supplier operations. As we can see in the Ferrero Sustainability Report, we all know that the cocoa sourcing has a high risk on child labor. So somebody asked about social risk. Usually we identify social risk. You can find it in the academic research related to your sector. Ferrero, I think they refer to certification body result and also academic research. It is quite well known that agriculture, especially in this case cocoa, is has a very high risk on engaging child labor. So Ferrero put in place a monitoring systems to prevent child labor even to the sourcing states of their manufacturing product. Ferrero prefers to use certification process for the responsible sourcing program. So in this case, when Ferrero put in place, making sure that there is no child labor, it correlates to SDG 8, 16, and to some extent also to SDG 5. Okay. So potential action plan for SDG related to elimination of child labor is like Ferrero, it is highly recommended to have a visible and clear policy, internal policy on child labor. It should not be limited on your own operations. It should be extended to your supply chains. And then you need to put in place supplier assessment on the risk of child labor. And then make sure you get the supplier's commitment on anti-child labor. And then please put in place a monitoring system. So not only assessment at the beginning of supplier recruitment, but also monitoring systems along the implementations of the working contract with your supplier. Now, next, on the decent work, we will focus on occupational health and safety. Under GRI, it refers to GRI 403. Under the SDG, it correlates to SDG 8 and SDG 3. So basically, preventing road traffic injuries, preventing unintentional poisoning, directly responds to SDG 3.6 and 3.9, while your own occupational health usually directly related to 8.8 of the SDG. Now, the GRI has 10 disclosure for this one. Basically, you need to explain about your system, putting in place the occupational health and safety from prevention to promotion, accident management to evaluations and monitoring from your internal operations down to the suppliers. And then you also need to disclose about your results through the data on workplace injuries and accidents. Now here is the example from Sido Muncul. Sido Muncul is the emerging herbal medicine manufacturer. Their stock is quite good now. I think they. So these are the examples. So they give the policy, the system in place, and also the total numbers of the incidents and fatality and accidents. Okay. The most recent trends is that you also need to disclose about the occupational illness to make sure that you get the number for the occupational illness, so that you can put in place a good programs to do the health promotion programs. Now these are the potential action plans: increase and strengthen occupational health system and supporting facility, more robust data recording of injury and accident cases. I remember that Heineken, the multinational company, they put in place road traffic prevention for the logistic, the truck drivers. So there is a mechanism for them to reduce road traffic injury for the logistic component. So that is one of the good examples on how to contribute to SDG related to health and safety and December. Now on training and education, GRI 404, it requires the disclosure on average number of training hours per employee and the list of training programs for employees and regular performance review as the results of all your initiative. So if you did this, you already contribute to SDG 4 and SDG 8. Okay. SDG 4 directly contribute to indicator 4.3.1, participation rate of youth and adults in formal and non-formal education and training in the previous 12 months by sex. So the corresponding GRI standards is GRI 404.1 and 0.2. And these are the example. This one is from the Bank of Central Asia in Indonesia. It's a private bank. I think they are also showing a good result. So they show the total training hours and then the average training hours per employee divided by sex. So average training hours for male and average training hour for female. Oh, the female is more into learning than the male. Okay, so they need to do something to address the gap now. And they also explain about the programs. As you can see, they have technical competency, they have professional skill, they have certification program. And then to ensure that the training programs is going somewhere, PCA also disclose about their performance appraisal framework. Okay. So the potential action plan for SDG 4 and SDG 8 related to human capital capacity building is about ensuring that your employee has access to training, and you measure the number of hours and make sure there is no wide gap. PCA has a gap, yeah. And add more strategic training relevant to employee competency and future business strategy. If you look at NL, actually, they do the frameworks called upskilling and reskilling, because they are transitioning from the old power plant into renewable energy and now into digitalization, and this is called electrifications. So they need a new kind of skill from their employees. So they do they invest heavily on reskilling and upskilling of their employee. So it also contributes to SDG 4 perfectly. And to show impact, you cannot only discuss about or have a program about training and education. It will be good if you can also show the impact of your training and education on the result of your performance review. Now, the last one is about company complaint mechanisms and responsibility to customers. This is aligned with the SEC one report. Under the GRI standards, this is aligned with GRI 417, 418, 419, and 411, depending on your business model. And then in principle, it's also aligned with indicator 16.3 if you put in place community complaint mechanisms or grievance mechanisms. Okay. So what do you need to disclose? Let's go through this one by one. Under the GRI 417 and 411, basically it's about putting in place a grievance mechanisms, and then you disclose about the number of complaints you receive, and then the results of that complaint, whether it's still ongoing, solved, or whether it's going to court. And then if you receive some penalty on fines regarding to your the complaints or to some of infringements to local regulations, you also need to disclose about that penalty and fines. But the most important thing is for you to explain about what you do after you receive the penalty or the fines, and what you change in your SOP or policy to respond to that penalty. So this is the example from BP and Nestle. Basically, BP explained about the community complaints that they received in 2019. Some is about complaint about job opportunities. Some is about environment in green. And I think the purple one is about the social complaints and the green one is about environment related complaints. And then Nestle's only disclosed that they don't have any significant fines or non-monetary sanction in the last year reporting period. And they also disclosed that they have 12 significant product recalls or incidents of non-compliance. And then they explain two is about incorrect labeling. So this is a good examples about being responsible about customer safety. Okay. So potential action plan is robust recording of incidents and complaints from stakeholders, including if you can disaggregate the data from specific indigenous groups, or whether it's from consumers. And then you do need to put in place a monitoring system to know the status or the progress of the cases and its resolution. Now, on the customer health and safety, this relate to marketing and labeling and also socio-economic compliance. This is important under the COVID period, GRI 419.1 on the socio-economic compliance. So basically it requires you to almost similar to the previous to show about the approach you use to ensure that your product is safe for your customers, and then to disclose about incidents of non-compliance with safety regulations. Now this is the example again from Sidomuncul. Sidomuncul explains that one of the management approach to ensure product safety is that they adopt certification. They have HACCP on food safety system standard, and then the implementation of ISO 22000, and they put in place SOP, and they have an audit body to check on this. So potential action plans to ensure customer safety is disclosing or put in place about your system, adopting a new certification or new SOP, or doing a more robust auditing for product safety is one of the contributions that you can do related to customer safety and then reducing customer complaint. Okay. I think this one is the last pillar about the governance performance. So you are required to report on governance structure, code of conduct, board and community responsibility, board and executive profiles, board and executive remuneration and compensation. It was mentioned by Henry too, and the achievement or past performance of your board members, and then on anti-corruption and whistleblowing. So basically almost all related to governance structures or governance performance. You should refer to GRI 102.18 to 102.39. Now let's focus on the anti-corruptions. Anti-corruption related to GRI 205 and GRI 16.5.2. It's about disclosing or being transparent about bribery or anti-corruption incidents. So what do GRI ask to disclose? So basically GRI outlines that you need to have in minimum mechanisms to communicate your anti-corruption policy and procedure, and then you are required to disclose about the incidents and the actions taken. So this is another example from BP in their Sustainability Report 2019. So they explains about the programs. They have a training which is accessed by more than 11,000 employees, and then the communication channel is also explained, and then the total numbers of concerns and inquiries is also disclosed by them. So potential action plans related to corruption is increasing exposure of anti-corruption policy to employee. You also need to start including the supplier, establishing monitoring and whistleblowing systems to identify and measure and mitigate corruption risks along the value chain. recording corruption cases and reporting how far the companies tackle it seriously. Now, this is just a very brief tips and tricks. Let's take a look at the gender lens. This will help you to integrate gender lens into the economic and social aspects. So first, it's all about visibility. So if you claim that you are having support to SDG 5, is very serious on gender equality, or supporting SDG 8, especially you says that you want to support the agenda of empowering the small medium enterprises. So the first one is about visibility. Visibility means their data is visible in your strategy, in your report. So you need to do data segregations of gender or minority groups. Okay. The data should be segregated at the level of your employee, your community beneficiary, and also at the level of your vendors and supplier. It would be good if you know how many of your vendor or supplier is actually still at the level of small or medium enterprises, and which one is women-owned business. Now, after you do the visibility, then it's good to show good practices. For example, if you have policy on integration of gender or minority groups, you could highlight some of your strategies or practices to ensure the protection of women and minority groups at workplace, or any program or practices that ensure more inclusions of those that is on the minority level. And then on the contributions to SME, under the GRI 204, it is good to show the percentage of spendings or the amount of spendings on local suppliers, especially if they're SME. So it is one of the good practices. And then please do segregate the data so that we know the number of spending on women-led SME. So we know about your investment, and highlight some strategies or practices to increase the SME engagement into your value chain, because you do need to sometimes, or most of the time, you need to invest something to make sure that the SME is in compliance with your requirements to become your supplier or your vendors. So this is some of the examples from BP. They disaggregate the data to all level. This is a good disaggregation. And then for those who wants to take a sneak peek, this one is taken from How to Close the Gender Gap from the Harvard Business Review in May. So this is still warm from the oven. So this is from all stages at the level of attracting candidate, like what NL is promising with 50% by 2023. And then at the practice of hiring, integrating, and then developing the capacity of employee down to retaining good performance. You can read about it on your own. And then there was a questions, I think, about alignment, reporting environmental performance and SDG action plans. We are not going to go in depth, but in principles, GRI also has environmental related disclosure, as you know, under the disclosure 300 series. So in principles, as you can see in the TCFD, it requires you to develop some metrics. You can use, for those who already use GRI, so basically the GRI standard will also help you to develop your metrics related to all the activities or programs that support your climate change contribution programs, either to water and energy efficiency or emission reductions or less waste, or even your activity on conservations. So basically this is the basic. And then you can use also you can also align it with the SDG related to selected environmental disclosures, and then report it using the 3 frameworks and then the CDP2. So now we are on the Q&A. We have no questions, or already answered by Henry. Back to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Lani, for your presentation. I think we have learned, right, how we can align different frameworks among GRI standards and also SDGs targets and indicator in more details. So now, in the chat box, I have answered some questions so far, but I think I want to bring 2 questions live so then Bulani can elaborate further. So the first question is, are there any minimum requirements or required topics under the GRI standards for companies to ensure that they have sufficiently disclose their sustainability information? Over to you, Bu Lani.
So the structures with GRI standard, if you want to count the number of disclosures, we GRI asks you to do your stakeholder engagement first, so you can list down all the necessary concerns from your stakeholders. Then you need to do your materiality analysis. With the upcoming revised universal standard from GRI, aside from the stakeholders engagement, you need to take into account the sectoral standard, whether it's referred to GRI sectoral standard or it refer your industry sectoral standard. So once you do that, the last stage is for you internally with your group to determine from the stakeholders, including the regulation, in this case, the SEC 56.11 report for this year, and then your other stakeholder concerns, and then the industrial sectors, then you need to do the materiality analysis and determine which one will become a priority to be covered more extensively in your report. But right now, with more mandatory reporting by the SEC, everything that is required by the SEC has to appear on your sustainability report. Okay, hope it answers your questions.
Thank you. So my second question is actually about SMEs. So as people have acknowledged that you have told people about how a large company can work to empower local SMEs through their sustainability activities. So in this work, there is a question about how far an SME can use the GRI standards in disclosing their sustainability information. Having considered that many SMEs, for example, do not really have, concrete data or system in place. Thank you, Bulani.
Yeah, so if you go to the GRI database, database.globalreporting.org, you can find that there are a lot of SMEs that has produced sustainability report. If you ask how to use it, so basically for GRI, you can reference using the GRI standard in preparing your first sustainability report. For SME level, if you don't have a very good data management, which is a similar programs with any kind of any size of company with their first time reporting journey, nobody has a good data management system for first time reporter. So whether you are big, multinational, or small, or even micro, the GRI standard will help you to how do you call it? For you to develop your own framework, because sustainability reporting is not only about data. Sustainability reporting is more about the way you identify your most important issue, and then how you manage that issue, and then how you measure that issue. So if you don't have a good data, because you are still starting, that's fine. But it has to be clear that you have a clear management approach or thinking to go to that way to manage it much more better. For SME, usually we suggested for them to limit their disclosures to how they manage their sourcing or their sourcing, and then how they manage their energy source, how they manage their water if it's in accordance with their business model or manufacturing process, and then waste management, and then employee management and customer safety and marketing and labeling. That is the usual minimum things that we require them to do. At some extent, if they do have employee, we recommend them to report on how they manage employee or temporary worker. They have to be quite a little bit transparent about it.
Thank you, Bulani, for your question, for your answer. So we have another question in the chat box. So would you explain more about the data assurance process to certify a sustainability report by a third-party assurance company? And also how does this data assurance process is connected to the GRI core, comprehensive, etc. Claims that a company can use in their reports? Thank you, Bulani. Over to you.
Thank you, Henry. So assurance is a different thing. So it's quite separate, and usually it's provided by public accountancy firm. The big four, PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, EY. Am I missing something? Is the usual player that provide assurance service. But I think it grows more and more. We have SGS, I forgot the abbreviations. We have SR Asia, which is headquartered in India and present in many countries. We have TÜV Rheinland. No, those are the stakeholders, but basically they will refer to AA 1000 or ESI 3000 as the principle for doing assurance. So make sure you check and ask them what are the methodologies that they use when they say that they provide assurance service. So that is one. Second, find out about their methodology. There are different stages of assurance. It can be limited assurance. It can be comprehensive assurance. We were informed by one of our the company that worked, the company that collaborate with us. If it's a comprehensive, sorry, not comprehensive, is if it's the full package, they even go down. For example, if you report on having a program with local community, a complete assurance package, to pilot tested, they can go down to one of the locations to check on the actual happening on the field. So that's a complete package. But the limited assurance usually is a test review process. So it depends also on your the request from your investor, and it also depends on your strategy. Of course, the more complete, it means that your report has, that you say, more reliable in terms of data and information that is published on your report. But it's not mandatory. Yeah? I don't think under the SET is mandatory. It's becoming mandatory with under the EU new regulation. Not sure when it's put in place. Henry?
Okay. Thank you, Bulani, for your answer. So we have another question here. So reporting using GRI standards, is there any evaluation in terms of the company is doing well or poor or not? I'm quite understand that improvement or strategy to improve is more important. But in some particular areas, there probably have no same standard of improvement worldwide, right? Because of different contexts. So could you help explain and answer this question, Bulani? Thank you.
So I hope I'm doing justice with all the questions. Yeah, you were right. So there is no same standard, but some sectoral, for example, like IPK, for the oil and gas, they work diligently and ensuring that they are achieving to some point. For example, right now, this is that they want to go to net zero by 2050, if I'm not mistaken. Also, some of the sectoral standards, if I'm not mistaken, like the GCCA, Global Construction, I forgot the other C, Cement, I think, Global Construction and Cement Association, which is initiated by the World Business Council of Sustainable Development. If I'm not mistaken, under the GCCA, so they make a commitment to cut down the emission to 40% from 2010 this year or something. So some sectoral industry association, they have a very clear benchmarking on where they want to go. That is one. Second, the SDG is actually a good starting point because the country usually has what we call nationally determined contribution, in this case for the climate change, but also for the other, they usually have a number where they want to go. For example, if they want to reduce, they want to increase the number of educations, so the target is a good indications for you on where to go, including the mixing of renewable energy and conservative energy. For example, in Indonesia, they want to get to the mixings into 23% by 2030 or something. So if you are a business, if you want to know where to go, so the first start is maybe because the states or the country says that let's go to 20%. So 22% is a good start as your benchmarking starting point. The last one is if you are being rated by rating agency, that is also a starting point for benchmarking and make sure that or using that for your evaluation process to advise you on where to go. Hope that answer your questions. Okay, I don't see any new question. Oh, there is a new question. Okay, from the global pandemic of COVID-19, the company supports medical equipment, okay, to our employee family. Okay. Yeah. So it matches with SDG 3. If you keep them to be operational, for example, if you also support your suppliers to stay operational by donating some medical goods, so it means that you contribute to SDG 8 and SDG 8. SDG 8 because you make sure that the small medium enterprises still continue their business so that they don't cut off the employment. And then SDG 3 because it's straightforward, it helps you with ensuring the health well-being of everyone. Okay. Okay, while we wait for another one, let me share the last slide before I forgot. There is an evaluation. Yeah. So this is just a reminder. The next session will be on the 22nd and 23rd of June. We will go into more detail. So right now it's just like a big sum up on how to do it. So hopefully we can do more on the advanced seminar on the 22nd and 23rd of June. It will be online. SET will share the registration later on. And then for today's sessions, it will be really appreciated if you can again fill in the survey because there is a differentiation for day 2. So please go back to the evaluation forms, bit.ly GRCF survey, or do the QR code scanning, and please fill in the evaluation forms and advise us whether we need what we need to improve or where we need to deep dive in the upcoming session. So hope this is okay. Okay. Okay, so more questions. So the easy part: school construction and clean water. School construction is under SDG 4. I think there is a specific target on building school there, if I'm not mistaken, and renovation I forgot. So it's a 4.4 or something. There is a specific SDG target on school constructions. On a clean water facility, if it's about access to clean water, you can take under SDG 6. But if the clean water is provided to poor community, you can double tax to SDG 1 and SDG 6. As mentioned before on the on my slide. So that one is easy. If gender and diversity is material topic for our industry, however, our country is not equality, should we match this topic with SDG? So let me try to respond to that one. The problem is not only with the so for some industry, gender equality is one of the things to do now. For example, it's like under the oil and gas, the mining, there are a global movement to ensure that in the male-dominated industry, gender equality is taken seriously. It's not about getting 50 to 50, although that's the dream, but it's more ensuring that you put in place an effort to ensure that you are addressing the issue of providing equal opportunity to all. So one of the, I really like reading Enel report about, because they are an energy company which is male dominated. So the way, this is the first time I looked at a sustainability report that shows that they address the key points in answering to gender equality in a male-dominated industry like energy. What they aim is more that ensuring more women is applying. If you don't have women applying to your job vacancy, you cannot do anything with making sure that you have more women in your workforce. So what they do is that they put in place systems by going to school, encouraging women and girls to take up a study related to science, technology, mechanics, and I forgot the E, environment, I think. So they go and encourage students level mid school to universities. They provide scholarship so that it gives the girls more competitive edge in entering this male-dominated market. So they have a very long-term program. So it's not a one overnight program. So it's a very long-term program. So right now, I think Enel is getting to 44% compositions. So that is one way to address the issue. I think Italy is the same, not so much good in terms of gender equality. If you look at annual report, the ratio of gender pay gap is, I think women get about 80% compared to men at 100%. So donation or charity, yeah, donation is a little bit hard, yeah. I'm not so sure. I need to get back to you on our second workshops. I need to find the correct one for religious activity. So basically, providing support for company, in this case, small and medium companies, by donating health equipment is in a long way you contribute to SDG 8. In a short term, you contribute to SDG 3. to ensure the health and well-being for everyone. The reasoning is that apparently it's not easy. Many of us will be easy to have access to some of the medical equipment or like face mask or sanitizer, but some people actually fall down back to poverty, and it's become a luxurious item for them. So providing support by donating this kind of equipment is actually supporting SDG 3 too, because it does provide help. Not everyone can buy face mask or sanitizer in the long run. Yeah? So hope that answer your questions. Okay. So if you have done your survey, if you have finished with the questions, I think we can conclude today's session. All the material will be shared by the SVP. And thank you. We have so many questions, so I really appreciate that. So thank you, everyone. See you on the next sessions on advanced workshop. Bye-bye.